Direct from our newsroom in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Eric Severide in Washington. In Munich, John Sheehan, John Lawrence, Haywood Hale Broon, Ed Rabel in Israel, Marvin Kalb in Washington, and Daniel Shore in Washington.
Good evening. It appears tonight that Israel intends to ask the United States and other nations for more than their sympathy over the deaths of 11 Israeli Olympians in Munich. Israeli officials indicate they are seriously considering a request that the American team and others pull out of the Olympic Games because of what happened there last night. That's the thrust of what CBS News has been told in Tel Aviv, and it also coincides with the view of Israeli Ambassador Yitzhak Rabin, who spoke with UN correspondent Richard C. Hotley.
The purpose, the essence of the Olympic Games is to cooperate peacefully, in harmony between nations, regardless to their political differences. And this Olympic Games has become the scene of one of the most atrocities that have taken place lately.
Meaning they should be continued.
Should not
be continued. So that your government, I assume, would be very disappointed by the fact that the games are being continued.
Well, I believe that we feel that after what has happened, it's time to say, well, what has been achieved, fine, but now, after this atrocity, it's time to put an end to it.
That was Marvin Kalb doing the interviewing. The games were resumed late today after a memorial service for the dead Israelis, and John Sheehan has the day after report from Munich.
12 days ago, on the day before the Munich Olympics opened, members of the Israeli team visited the nearby Dachau concentration camp. They took part in a memorial service there.
Here at the Olympic Stadium, earlier today, a memorial ceremony was held for some of them. The two killed in the attack in the Olympic Village by fanatical Palestinian terrorists, and the 9 killed in the gun battle between the terrorists and German police.
With the games suspended for the day, athletes and officials paid tribute to the dead Israelis. The memorial ceremony was ignored by Arab teams who stayed in their quarters in the Olympic Village. One of the Israeli survivors, Team Chief Shmuel Lalkin, delivered a brief address. He did not renew Israeli Premier Golda Meir's plea that the remaining games be canceled, but said the Israeli team would not participate further and would leave Munich deeply shaken. What began as a ceremony in the dignity of sorrow became a defiant rally to save the Olympics.
The games must go on, and we must continue our efforts to keep them clean, pure, and honest.
This afternoon, the Olympic Stadium was literally an empty shell. Flowers and Hebrew prayers decorated the Israeli flag. But by late afternoon, just outside the stadium, the ticket scalpers were back in business. On this little hill, where last night crowds breathlessly watched while the deadly drama was played out in the Israeli quarters, the curious gathered today to see the athletes go back to their training, including a few from the Arab countries. John Sheehan, CBS News, Munich.
There was considerable confusion over just what happened last night at the airport outside Munich. The first report was that all the Israeli hostages had been rescued. It was pitch black at the airport as the 3 helicopters arrived with the Arab commandos and the 9 Israelis. The story that finally emerged was that 2 of the Arabs got out of the helicopter to inspect the plane that was to take them to Cairo. That's when the shooting broke out. One official source said German sharpshooters tried to pick the 2 Arabs off, but hit only one of them. The Arabs then began machine gunning the hostages. One threw a grenade into one of the copters where several of the Israelis were tied. By today, all the details still weren't agreed on, but what was agreed on was that all 11 Israelis were dead, along with the German policeman, 5 of the Arabs. 3 other commandos were captured. This is the burned-out helicopter. Back at the Olympic Village, John Lawrence spent the day trying to reconstruct how the Arabs got in the first place. He spoke with Dr. Shaw Ladini, an Israeli athlete who was there when the Arabs struck.
I was in one of the apartments when the terrorist struck first in the first apartment. They fired several shots, which we heard, but we didn't pay to them full attention. But after firing again on the second apartment, we realized what happened, and we took off through the rear window, and I partially went to the safe place, and I went to the chief of the mission corps telling him what happened, and later we went to the police telling the happenings.
Was there much confusion or panic or shouting?
No, there was not much confusion among us that we went to a safe place, but I don't know really what was the confusion among those that were caught.
Was there apprehension before this happened?
Really, every Israeli knows that something always might happen, and we are living with this. And this is a kind of calculated chance that we are taking, and maybe this is the fate of a Jew who is living in Israel, in the same way that some Jews living abroad have other kinds of calculated risks too.
Moshe Weinberg, the man who first tried to hold off the terrorists, was the team's wrestling coach. Married 10 months ago, just recently the father of an infant son. Also killed in the Olympic Village, Joseph Romano, a weightlifter, father of 3. Among the Israelis killed at the airport, David Berger, who held American citizenship as well, his folks residents of Shaker Heights outside Cleveland. Kehat Shor, the marksmanship coach, 53 years old. Andre Spitzer, the fencing coach, a Dutch Jew who moved to Israel 2 years ago. Others, Yaakov Springer, a weightlifting instructor. Joseph Gutfriend, a referee in the wrestling competition. Amadzur Shapira, 32, the track coach. Mark Slavin, just 18 years old, a wrestler, immigrant to Israel from the Soviet Union just 3 months ago. The other victims, Elizar Halfin, a wrestler, Ziv Friedman, a weightlifter. There have been unofficial Israeli complaints that security at Munich was not strict enough, but Mark Spitz, the Jewish-American swimmer who won 7 Olympic gold medals, said today he thought security was adequate, better than at Mexico City 4 years ago.
A bra this sheer when you're built like me? I'll try it, but I don't see how it supports.
Introducing the No Visible Means of Support bra. New, feminine, and so fashionably sheer and light you'd never believe it supports. But built right into both the sheer and sheer lace styles are the famous Playtex support features.
You feel just as good as you look in the No Visible Means of Support bra.
My girdle. We can't go. I forgot my 18-hour girdle. Whoops, I have it on.
Playtex 18-hour girdle. You could forget you've got it on. The 18-hour girdle gives you firm control with freedom of movement. The secret? This fabric Playtex invented has full circle control power, plus full circle comfort stretch.
You look great.
I feel great.
Playtex 18-hour girdle. You could forget you've got it on.
Coupled with the sorrow, there was anger and revulsion in Israel. It might have been worse, but Prime Minister Golda Meir said she approved of the German use of force, that she was only sorry the efforts to free the Israeli hostages failed. In Tel Aviv, Ed Rabel sought reaction from relatives and friends of the dead athletes.
This is Wingate, the sprawling physical fitness institute where the Israeli Olympic participants trained in Israel.
Here at Wingate, as elsewhere in the Jewish state, the Israeli flag alongside a black banner is at half-mast. The mourning over the deaths of the Israelis has begun.
Here on the Wingate grounds is where Moshe Weinberg lived with his wife and an only child, just 1 month old. He was the big coach of wrestling at the institute who died during the initial terrorist attack at the Olympic Village. A neighbor, Mrs. Marilyn Bar-Or.
I think he was very excited about the games this time because he had 2 fine wrestlers, immigrants from Russia, both of whom I think were killed. And he really felt that he was going to put Israeli wrestling on the map. He felt that all the time, but he was really very encouraged this time. as it turned out, he had perhaps the largest squad to take to the Olympics for Israel. I think our experience has proved that we have to look after ourselves, and we perhaps do it better than anyone else. I think there must have been gross negligence in the security arrangements, just for letting people in and out generally, and not to speak of the Israelis specifically. And I think we have learned that we have to have our own people in some guise or other guarding. It's a terrible thing to have to fall back on, but if nobody else is going to take the responsibility for it, we'll have to do it ourselves.
Another coach on the Israeli team, Amitzer Shapiro, lived here at number 6 Ben Yehuda in Herzliya near Tel Aviv. His family closed their doors to the outside after they learned of his death. A friend, Harvey Otz, was a student of track under Mr. Shapiro.
How is Mrs. Shapiro taking this?
She's taking it very hard. I asked her if she needs any help or anything. The only thing she said, she wants her husband, nothing more she can take.
In the Neve Sharet quarter of Tel Aviv, the family of Eliezer Halfin learned only early this morning that he was killed. In the same neighborhood, the family of Kehat Shor, the coach of the Israeli rifle team. The bodies of the Israeli sportsmen will be returned to Israel tomorrow when there will be funeral services. Meanwhile, out of the mourning for those who died, there is a growing awareness among Israelis that they are not safe from guerrilla attacks when they leave their country, and that somehow they must be protected. Ed Rabel, CBS News, Israel.
Although most of the 18 Arab nations officially were silent on the Munich events, the guerrillas hailed their dead comrades as heroes and martyrs. In a radio broadcast from Cairo, the guerrillas charged that German police trapped the terrorists, fired first, and thus are guilty of brutality and thirst for Palestinian blood. For that, the guerrillas said, West German interests can expect more trouble. Meanwhile, Lebanon joined Jordan in denouncing the terrorist attack and expressed sorrow for what happened in Munich. Despite strong ties between Russia and the Arab world, the Soviet news agency TASS reported the Russian Olympians profoundly deplore the tragedy. But in Moscow, police rounded up some 30 Jews trying to demonstrate in front of the Lebanese embassy, herded them into buses, and drove them away. It wasn't known if they were jailed. Earlier in the day, police kept a group of Jews away from the Netherlands embassy as they tried to send a message of condolence to Israel.
I'm helping Paul keep fit. He does the exercise, I give him buckwheat.
Buckwheat's high nutrition cereal. Compare this 1-ounce serving and milk to this bacon and egg breakfast. Buckwheats with milk has 50% of the protein, more vitamins, more minerals, only half the calories.
Tastes great. Buckwheat and maple.
High nutrition Buckwheats. Helps you feel like $1,000,000. Buckwheats.
1 a.m. I've got to get some sleep. Been up so long and still don't feel drowsy. Okay, Marcia, you've really tried. But once in a while, there's a night when you really feel you need a sleeping aid. When you really feel you need Nitol. I follow directions, so I know Nitol's safe. And it works so well for me. It helps make me drowsy. I don't often need Nitol, but I'm sure glad it's here.
The events in Munich inevitably became a common topic of the presidential campaign. Senator McGovern, in an appearance before the California Board of Rabbis, blamed it on Egypt and Lebanon and urged the United Nations to counteract Arab terrorists. President Nixon called the terrorists international outlaws. He ordered increased protection of Israelis in America and immediate consultation with foreign governments to avert future terrorism. More on this from Marvin Cow.
Secretary of State Rogers spent more than an hour with the president plotting an international campaign to outmaneuver and then outlaw the kind of terrorism that bloodied the Munich Olympics. And then, unscheduled, the secretary appeared at a UN-sponsored anti-hijacking conference to demand action, for starters against nations harboring hijackers.
The government of the United States is prepared to take the most firm, severe action that the international community is prepared to join in. We think it's essential now to act, and we think that these tragic events that occurred in Munich underscore the necessity for action now.
Immediate reaction was diplomatically proper, but that's all. Egypt's position against sanctions and therefore action was apparently not moved by the events in Munich.
I don't think it will have any effect on the position of my government, because my position of my government is well known, and it is based on principles of international law.
Do you think that the events in Munich will hasten agreement here?
Well, I don't think there's any lack of intention to achieve agreement here. The events in Munich do make it quite clear the sort of situations one may be up against, but I don't think there was any lack of enthusiasm even before the events in Munich.
The administration is using the Munich massacre to push for new, strong international action against aerial hijacking and other forms of terrorism. So far, neither the massacre nor the Secretary's appeal has changed Egypt's mind or Russia's, and UN action may still be a long way off. Marvin Kalb, CBS News, the State Department.
Both the Senate and the House unanimously passed resolutions condemning the terrorism. The Senate measure said the civilized world should cut off contact with, quote, any peoples or any nation giving sanctuary, support, sympathy, aid, or comfort to acts of murder and barbarism. And Senate Majority Leader Mansfield questioned whether the Olympic Games should be continued. Mansfield said they have become a forum for political, ideological, social, and racial expressions of the most violent kind.
When you save your money at a savings and loan, your money does more than just grow. A savings and loan lends out money for homes, and that helps communities grow.
All the way across and look so fresh.
You're as young as you feel.
When I'm feeling my age because I need a laxative, I get flavored Haley's M.O. The Feel Young Laxative. Tastes real good.
For occasional irregularity, Haley's M.O. blends a gentle comforting agent with the thoroughness of the laxative doctors recommend most often.
Where to now?
Picnic on the island.
You're as young as you feel.
Flavored Haley's M.O., the Feel Young Laxative.
On February 7th, when President Nixon signed the first campaign financing reform in a half-century, he issued a statement saying, by giving the American public full access to the facts of political financing, this legislation will guard against campaign abuses and will work to build public confidence in the integrity of the electoral process. Well, the law, however, did not take effect for 60 days, and in that interim, Nixon fundraisers collected a reported $10 million from contributors they have refused to name. Today, a court action reached back to the old campaign financing law to try to force disclosure. Daniel Shore reports.
Under the new law, contributions before April 7th need not be disclosed, and the General Accounting Office documented efforts to beat the deadline. Today, John Gardner's Common Cause held disclosure is required under the old Corrupt Practices Act, and filed suit in federal district court against Republican Finance Chief Maurice Stans and 5 Nixon campaign committees.
In recent months, citizens have been treated to several highly questionable instances of huge sums flowing to the president's political campaign, while government favors flowed in the opposite direction. Perhaps the instances were all coincidental. The way to dispel the aura of mystery and suspicion is to bring all the facts out into the open. That is the purpose of our suit.
Gardner said that last night, after he'd announced today's news conference, the White House called trying to stay his hand, and a rush letter from Stanley Ebner, counsel to the Finance Committee to re-elect the president, asked a meeting to clear the air. Gardner summarized the letter.
As for the meaning of the term committee under the old law, there's ample support for our position that, one, the committee for the re-election of the president was not a committee within the meaning of the law. I think that position simply cannot be maintained if you read the law. I left out a phrase here that it was not a committee within the meaning of the law because its function was solely to support the president's renomination. a committee named the Committee to Re-elect the President, organized solely for his renomination, not his election. Direct quote from the letter.
The courts will have to say if such a suit under the old Corrupt Practices Act can be won, but the administration apparently takes it seriously enough to have asked that this suit be held off. If a suit like this were won, it would clear up a lot about the Watergate bugging, and more than that, expose just those Nixon contributors who made their contributions before April 7th in order not to be disclosed. Daniel Shore, CBS News, Washington.
Southern governors ended their annual conference today by electing Alabama's George Wallace as the new chairman and choosing a black, Governor Melvin Evans of the Virgin Islands, to serve with him as vice chairman. South Carolina's John West, who had been in line for succession, stepped aside in favor of Wallace, who had not sought the post. As West put it, Governor Wallace has suffered emotionally and physically in the last few months. Whether or not we agree with him, this tribute from his fellow Southern governors was the least we could do. On the New York Stock Exchange today, the averages were down in light trading. Volume was 12 million shares. The average price per share fell 26 cents on the New York Exchange, 8 cents on the American.
Okay, that ought to hold 'em for tonight. Let's go get us a beer.
When it's Miller time at the old home place, all the hands come riding in. If you've got the time, we've got the beer. Miller beer. If you've got the time, Miller beer. We've got the beer. Miller beer. If you've got the time.
Since time immemorial, mankind has searched for a different way to write. When the wheel first came out, everybody thought it was a new pen. They all jumped on it and started to write. They were dumb. Now we're modern and lucky. We can write with a banana. The Bic Banana, a smooth writing, fine line marker beauty. It comes in colors and it's only 29 cents. Don't live in the past. Nah.
The tragedy at the Olympic Games in Munich raises once again basic questions about terrorism itself. And here is Eric Severide's analysis.
The name of a charming Bavarian city became a generic term after 1938, meaning appeasement of armed terror and the long-range consequences that flow from it. Right now, the name Munich means non-appeasement of terrorists and the short-range consequences that can come from that. Small-scale tragedy this time, but tragedy. Terrorists strike at the essentially humanitarian societies because they are vulnerable. They will make efforts, pay prices to save individual lives. This is their immediate weakness and their ultimate strength. Killers, maniacs, and would-be martyrs have discovered this, along with the worldwide spread of an understanding of guerrilla tactics. And bigness in the form of great crowds of human beings, or bigness in the form of integrated technological economies, provide them their special opportunities. The United States cannot now conduct a political convention for the peaceful transference or continuation of power without guns, helmets, gas bombs, fire trucks, ambulances, police, soldiers, and clubs in massive attendance. And the world may never again be able to stage athletic contests, save under the same protection. One psychopath with a toy pistol can divert a huge aircraft thousands of miles off course. One with a bottle of chemicals could presumably poison the water supply for 1 million people. 10 adolescents running through dark alleys with bottles of gasoline can start 50 fires and tie up the entire fire department of a great city. In a degree of vulnerability, at least, this is a new situation in history. What can be done about terrorism, and it must be done on a worldwide basis, is terribly hard to know. It is hard enough to know how to begin thinking about it. The Western nations and Russia have not yet been able to agree on a treaty to check airplane hijacking alone. The first principle, obviously, is to resist the terrorists, and that is why the Olympic Games, after a pause for mourning, had to go on with whatever spirit can now be mustered among those taking part. It would be easier to think from there if it were possible to believe that every act of appeasement, of giving in and paying off, were equally wrong. Giving in to an individual hijacker may well mean encouraging, on a sporadic basis, other potential hijackers, but to give in to an organized, dedicated organization of terrorists, like these Arab fanatics, means with absolute certainty that their numbers and their murders will be increased. The imperatives that must govern the state of Israel are not the same as those that govern a commercial airline.
Within the Olympic complex at Munich, the tragedy has had a profound effect, of course. Haywood Hale-Brun reports on the mood and the reaction.
In the shallow waters of a temporary town like the Olympic Village, waves quickly subside. But though the surface is calm, the waters are darker now. The crowds still flow through the village, but the bubble is gone from the current. And in a place where jogging has been a way of life, the sitters sometimes outnumber the walkers. Music, a passive pastime for athletes, drew some into that forgetting of jagged reality which harmony, the inspired illusion of happy order, can produce. In the souvenir shops, the merchandise was more fingered than fought over, as once it was. T-shirt piles shrank as slowly as a heap of homework on a spring evening, while the street vendors were reduced to wheedling. The cyclists, wheeled centaurs, remained an Olympic constant, still astride even at rest. But one young American bike rider, John Vandevelde, was shaken enough to be a pedestrian as he described the change he felt.
Morning now that, the truth came out, and yes, it has changed. I think the feeling's lost. The Olympic spirit is gone from this games. It's just, it's finished. I don't feel it anymore,
This is Haywood Hale-Brun at the Olympic Village in Munich.
With the Olympic Games resumed, there was tragedy on a much smaller level today in Munich. Olympic officials decided to take away the gold medal won by 16-year-old American swimmer Rick DeMont in the 400-meter freestyle. DeMont shattered the world record in that race, but a test later showed traces of a drug called ephedrine. DeMont had been taking it for years because of a bad asthma condition, but it also is a stimulant. Despite that medical reason, DeMont now becomes the first Olympic athlete in 60 years since Jim Thorpe to have a gold medal taken from him. The world has had another tragic example from Munich of the extent to which men can be driven by hate and the propaganda that perpetuates it. From Belfast, a back-to-school story. This was the first day of school there, and as the day ended, Catholic and Protestant children clashed with bottles and stones, and it took the British Army to break them up. And that's the way it is. Wednesday, September 6, 1972. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
What's the holdup? Anyone hurt? Nah, drug jackknife. We'll be here for hours. My stomach can't take this.
Welcome to the Acid Club. All AIDS, huh?
The Acid Club. Anywhere acid indigestion, heartburn brings people together. But Rolaids consumes 47 times its weight in excess acid.
How's your stomach now?
Rolaids won't move that truck, but it can help you resign from the Acid Club.
It's for people who suffer from arthritis minor pain. Arthritis, strength, bufferin. 5 grains more pain reliever in each 2-tablet dose than 2 regular aspirin. Specially formulated. In the first minutes, it speeds 100% more pain reliever on the way to where you hurt. Relief of minor pain and its stiffness, though temporary, lasts for hours. Arthritis, strength, bufferin. More pain reliever in a special formulation.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. A Supreme Court justice speaks out on the Constitution, the country, and his own colorful career. Watch CBS Reports Mr. Justice Douglas tonight at 8, 7 Central on CBS.
An emergency or a disaster? It's an emergency if you can do something about it, and a disaster if you can't. The difference between an emergency and a disaster could be the dollars that you've saved at Commerce Union Bank.